Today we're going to take a look at the A399 4K monitor from Korea. Okay, so this is a 4K, and at present it's a really great value. It's a 39.5 inch 4K behemoth. It can do 4K at 60 Hz over HDMI and Displayport 1.2. It even does the 444 Chroma, though I'd recommend if you're going to do that you do that over Displayport, and I'll explain why in a minute. Unboxing this, the first thing you want to do is set the on-screen display to English. It'll be in Korean, but you just arrow over and set this option, and then it's a lot easier to deal with and see what your options are. The next thing you want to do is turn off this vivid brightness thing, or this vivid thing. It basically seems to be some kind of edge finding algorithm. It really makes things pop in movies, but if you're using this as a monitor, you don't want this. It has a couple of color modes as well, though ours came with a reasonably sane default of sRGB. So it also has two HDMI ports. That's one 1.2 and one 2.0. The 2.0 can do 60 Hz and 4K, although it can be a little challenging to do 4K 60 Hz with Chroma 444. So that's just a limitation of HDMI. So if you're going to use it in the best possible way, recommend Displayport. It also has one dual-link DVI that can do 4K at 30 Hz. And one analog audio in, because it has built-in 10-watt speakers, which you're probably not going to use anyway. There are a lot of forum threads that explain that HDMI 2.0 just barely doesn't have the bandwidth to do 4K 60 Hz Chroma 444 and HDCP, high definition content protection. So stick to Displayport 1.2, and that also means you need a newer graphics card that supports Displayport 1.2. So you really can't run this with an older graphics card. But hey, if you're buying a 4K monitor, you probably don't have an older graphics card anyway, right? We used this test pattern and verified that we are getting Chroma 444, because LG had that debacle where they were saying, look, we totally do 4K with the 444 Chroma, and it was actually 420. Oops, that's not good. After we tested the Samsung U28D 590D, that's one of the first real affordable 4K displays, we thought it might be a good comparison monitor for this one. Now, if you haven't seen our Samsung U28D 590D video review, you should go check that out. It's older, it's from last year. We wanted to sort of compare notes on this monitor with that one. Now, our review of that Samsung monitor was okay, but it was not great. And here we have this monitor, and doing the side-by-side, this monitor, the A399, absolutely destroys the Samsung U28D 590D in every way imaginable. So that was kind of surprising. So when we were doing our comparison testing with the U28D 590D, the A399 is a 39-inch display, versus the 27-inch size of the Samsung. But the A399 actually has a lower input latency. It's about 30 milliseconds faster. It has fewer dropped frames, and looking at the pixel transition time, like you do the lagom thing, and it's got the bar going back and forth, and you can see the black pattern behind it. This monitor is better in every way. We also did a quick gaming test in GTA 5, and I really couldn't detect any input lag just from using it as a gamer. I was using an R9 290X with the Displayport 1.2, and it was buttery smooth even at the native 4K resolution, though I did have to run the other settings at around medium in order to have a nice high frame rate. Now, the brightness on this display is about 350 millicandelas per square meter. That's a little on the low side. So in doing side by side with the Samsung is maybe just a hair brighter, but overall it's not really detrimental or deleterious to the image quality. On the A399, it is a little brighter in the middle of the display. Like if you're looking at the display straight on with just a pure white screen, it does seem that the middle of the screen is a little bit brighter than the edges. Now, in monitor testing, they have an apparatus that measures the brightness, and normally you get a worksheet or something and it measures that and it points it out. But on this particular one, it was noticeable, whereas on other displays, the uniformity is uniform enough that you don't really see it with the naked eye, but the instruments report, that there's a little bit of varying brightness. So I was a little bit surprised to see that on a pure white screen, the middle is a little bit brighter than the edges. Now, while the Samsung used the TN panel, this one uses a new type of panel that I haven't really had much experience with, which is the Super MVA, normally black transmissive panel. Now, to my eye, it looks like a good IPS panel from circa, 2011, 2012, something like that, but the blacks are richer and deeper. The pixel arrangement is an RGB vertical stripe. The viewing angle on this is advertised as 176 degrees, both horizontal and vertical, and I would say that that's basically accurate. I will say that there is a slight color shift when you're looking at the panel from above, But other than that, any color shifting or gamma shifting is really minimal, and the color shift is really more of a gamma shift than a color shift when looking at it from above. While playing GTA 5, I found the optimum distance from the display was about 18 inches or so. At that distance, Windows really doesn't need any scaling. If you follow our channel, you probably know that we love 27-inch monitors, and those monitors have a resolution of 2560 by 1440. That works out to be about 107 pixels per inch in terms of how many pixels over a given screen area. This monitor is almost the same pixel density. It's a little higher at around 113 pixels per inch, but that means that you can use Windows without the god-awful display scaling, which still doesn't even really work right in Windows 10. At a comfortable viewing distance, the text was still large and perfectly readable with no scaling. It looks almost the same as it does on a 27-inch 1440p monitor. It's the same pixel density, so the size of things is basically the same, even though we're talking about a 27-inch monitor versus a 39-inch monitor. The 39-inch monitor is physically larger and has more pixels, and so all things being equal, the stuff on the 27-inch monitor is basically the same size as it would be on the 39-inch 4K monitor. One of these 39-inch monitors has more pixels, almost 1 million more pixels, than two 27-inch 2560 by 1440 monitors, and it really takes up a lot less room. It's taller, but not quite as wide. Alright, so surely you must be thinking there's a catch, and in fact there are two, but they may not be a big deal to you, so let me explain what they are. First off, is this panel type seems to have been engineered more on the TV side of the equation than the monitor side of the equation. So what does that mean exactly? Well, the biggest black mark against it is that in addition to the slightly inconsistent screen brightness that we talked about, there's this sort of shadowing around the edges of the display. It almost looks like it's a Mac, or Windows 10 sort of does this weird shadowing on Windows, but this shadowing sort of built into the panels. It was a bit off-putting at first, but I got used to it after about 5 or 10 minutes, and it wasn't a big deal. I didn't really notice it in gaming at all, so any kind of multimedia or moving pictures, I really didn't notice the sort of slight shadowing around the edges. I was able to lessen the shadowing by loosening some of the screws around the edges of the display about a half a turn. The other annoying thing is that the power cord is built in and non-removable. Now, when you buy this from the link at the bottom of the story, they're going to include a free adapter to make it adapt to your local plug variant, like whatever kind you have. So in my case, I get the North American plug adapter, and that works fine. But the power cord is not removable. So if you accidentally run over it with a chair, or your cat chews through it, or whatever, it's going to be a problem because the power cord is non-removable. For me, these two things are really not a big deal. The color accuracy, the viewing angle, the response time, and the price really win the argument for me. The shadowing really did not bother me. Even if I were running this in a 2-monitor configuration, it really wouldn't be a big deal. I really thought it was more of a big deal at first when I first saw it. Once I actually sat down and started using it and, started moving windows around and using applications and that kind of thing, I really couldn't tell. I mean, with the start menu at the bottom anyway, the shadowing looks like it's part of the start menu. At the edges, it's a little more noticeable, but really it's only about 10 pixels on either side. So when you're talking about, 3840 in your horizontal resolution, it's really, that and the price point, it's really hard to be upset about that, but know that that exists. The price point really is what makes or breaks this monitor. The motion quality for video gaming, response time, all that stuff is top notch. The shadowing around the edges is a little annoying. The power cord thing is a little annoying. When you contrast the features of this monitor to, what we saw in our review of the Samsung U28D 590D, I would take this monitor hands down every time, every single time. There's simply, in my mind, not an argument where I would go with a monitor like the Samsung U28D 590D. And that's sort of surprising because Samsung is usually, the gold standard. And I know quite a lot of you out there have picked up panels like that. But for me, 39-inch 4K in this good image quality, it's a no-brainer. I'll probably actually order a few more of these. It's that good. So the shadowing for me, not really a big deal. If you have one of these, let us know what your thoughts are in the forum over at techsyndicate.com. If you're thinking about getting one of these, head on over to the forum because chances are somebody's posted a lot of really interesting and useful information. So I'm Wendell, and I'll see you there.